Did you know about 10% of the human population has dyslexia, which is a lot of the population? You could think that this would impact everything around the world, but the world keeps on spinning. People keep on walking. Days go by like everything is normal. Even though dyslexia can pose challenges, it is not a bad thing. Let's take a look at the human brain. Here are two different brains, one from a person with dyslexia and one from a person without dyslexia. They both fire messages from neuron to neuron. The difference is in how they do it and how much gray matter is in the left hemisphere of their brain. Gray matter, according to Lexercise.com, are nerve cells that primarily have the purpose of processing information. Oddly enough, it's also proven that people who have learning disabilities have one area in the left hemisphere of their brain that is bigger than the area in the right hemisphere of their brain. Still, this doesn't mean that people who have dyslexia are less intelligent. It means that they usually work with the right side of their brain, which leads them to become very creative individuals. So, in conclusion, people who have dyslexia are intelligent and creative people. They just need to learn in their own way. Now, here are interviews with people sharing their experiences with dyslexia. How did dyslexia affect your social life?
Um, at first it was really bad because I made some poor life choices, got angry a lot. I had anger issues because I was just so frustrated. All the other kids understood, and I just couldn't get any of the stuff that was taught. And at first it was really bad, but then I went to a school in Austin, and then there was more people like me, and that helped rebuild my confidence in school, and now I have a pretty good social life.
And tell me about your experience at Ross and Saunders.
Ross and Saunders was a really interesting school because it was small, and the teaching style wasn't just visual and like auditory. There was multiple, like you could learn in like more than one way because the teachers were specially trained for teaching dyslexics. And the classes there were developed for dyslexia. Like, you would do more hands on projects than writing assignments, or you would do more multiple choice than like answering questions because with dyslexia, sometimes those are some problems you have.
What advice would you give to parents or siblings?
If you're a parent, one thing you should do is always support your child. The best thing to do is if you think your child has dyslexia, the best thing possible to do is look into the symptoms they have and maybe get it checked out at a doctor because most of the time people catch it too late, and then thankfully my family, we caught it early enough. It wasn't super early, but before like it became a difficulty and I was put back and held back from classes because of my disability. And for siblings, just treat them normally. What advice would you give to teachers and family members to help the child with dyslexia?
Well, I would say one for siblings, that for the sibling that doesn't have dyslexia or isn't diagnosed with it, I feel like they should like kind of embrace their sibling more and hang out with them and just build a really good relationship with them, because the child with dyslexia might already be struggling in one part of their life when it comes to academic, and you just want to support them the most by just making that other family part of their life better so they won't get frustrated or anything. For parents, I feel like they should understand that their child learns in a different way, that their child doesn't learn like them, and that the child learns like themselves. So you shouldn't try to teach the child like how the parent learns. The parent should teach the child about how they learn. And for teachers, I feel like it's kind of like the same thing for parents, but I also feel like they should
just like learn a bit more about dyslexia or really any just disability or anything. So they can just, whenever a student comes along that has dyslexia, for example, they would know how to help them.
Hi, my name is Bill Greeno, and I am being interviewed by Sienna Lopez.
How did you figure out that you had dyslexia?
I figured out that I had dyslexia when I was in college. I figured it out because I was in the student services building and there was a poster on the wall and it explained how you could go anywhere and do anything and be on a ship or be on a mountaintop by reading a book. And it was that idea that got to me and I decided, gosh, I want to read. And I never had read for pleasure. I'd struggled my way through elementary school and middle school and high school and worked very hard to do that. Still graduated with honors, was able to go to college. And here I am sitting in this student services center and decided that I wanted to get tested and or do whatever someone does because I didn't really know. So I went to the counter and I asked about it, and they were really great. They said, "Sure, we can schedule you for testing." And I said, "Oh, you have testing?" And they set me up for a test, and sure enough, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and I was set up with special education after that, so I could learn to read and have been reading for pleasure and reading better for educational purposes ever since.
How did a reading specialist help you?
They showed me, well, first during the testing, I learned a lot about what I didn't know. And then they gave me really specific methods for getting better at reading. So instead of just trying to read a chapter with the end of the chapter in mind, because that's the way I'd always attacked it, like, okay, let's just get to the end of the chapter. They had me break down by sentence and by paragraph, by section, and read and stop and review mentally what I'd read. So I was able to start establishing a reading comprehension, a level of reading comprehension that I'd never had before.
How has dyslexia changed or impacted your life?
How has it changed or impacted my life? Well, it hasn't changed it because it's always been there. The impact was um, was really huge when I actually found out that there was a way around it.
Did teachers understand how to help you at the time?
In junior high and high school, and obviously primary, not at all. There was no understanding. When I got to college, they did, and there were special accommodations made for me through the Disabled Student Services, and it was wonderful. If it wasn't for dyslexia, I wouldn't be who I am.
Hello, my name is Nancy Lopez, and I'm an artistic director of Trails and Vistas and the mom of Sienna Lopez and Tavia Lopez.
What are some suggestions to teachers who help dyslexic students?
Well, I would say one, that you're teaching the students for the subject matter. So if you're studying about atoms or you're studying about architecture, that you let the student give the output of that knowledge however best fits them. And so it might be a PowerPoint. Now we have voice to text with computers, which is fabulous. Or maybe it's an oral test. And or maybe it's a written test, but you give them enough time that they don't have anxiety about how they're writing or how they're spelling, that you're getting the information out of them the best way they can.
What subject was easy for you in school?
There wasn't a lot of things that were easy in school. School was very challenging, and that's why it's so important to find your gift. If that's someone that's in the arts or the theater or engineering. So and things weren't easy. But if you go through a program for dyslexic students, it offers you the opportunity to make things easier, to find a way to test better, to find a way to, share your knowledge with your teachers or your family or your coworkers. The one thing I would say is, as a mother of someone who's dyslexic, I have a wonderful son and a wonderful daughter. My son is dyslexic, and if you feel like, as a parent, that your child is struggling, that you seek out the programs, that you keep asking those questions from the administrators and the teachers, and you find programs for your child. We were fortunate enough to go to Austin, Texas last year and go to a private school for Tavio that was just for dyslexic students. And that really was a way for him to build his confidence and learn tools in the education system that he can excel. He could be anything he wants to be. He can be a scientist, an engineer, the president. He could be an artist, an actor, whatever he wants to be, he can be. But he needed some tools to help him build the confidence of how to share his knowledge that was in here, but a way to get it out. And so I think that's very important for the teachers and the administrators and for the parents to really keep being an advocate and being an ambassador and just trying to help your child be the best person he can be or she can be.
And my dyslexia was not diagnosed by anyone except for me when I went to college and started studying education. And it manifested itself mostly with me, not so much difficulty with reading, but because I was very good reading silently to myself. What I had trouble with was reading aloud. And because I actually read during some testing, the only test I ever had in the 4th grade, you take a standardized test. And I was reading at a 10th grade level in the 4th grade, but I couldn't read aloud because I kind of speed read. I could kind of go down a page and pick up everything like that. And then when it came time to read aloud, I'd stumble over words and everything. And so the teachers thought I didn't know how to read. And actually, I read the newspapers, I read everything, because I love to read. I read cereal boxes at breakfast. I'd read the back of them, but I couldn't read aloud smoothly. So what happened was, in her brilliance, my 4th grade teacher put me in a row with, there were 3 of us, 2 other kids. One was totally retarded, and the other one was kind of a gangster, a little criminal. And myself, and on the back of our chairs, she had a little sign that said STR, which is the slow turtle row. Mm-hmm. And it was really tough when I was a kid.
What benefits are there to having dyslexia?
What I think, this is going to be kind of a general statement of just what can happen with dyslexic, I think, dyslexics, is that you learn to cope with stuff a lot better than other kids do with it, just kind of progress along. And it's actually, I think it's been an asset to me because I'd always figure out another way around doing stuff. And it's kind of like, I wound up being a freelance photographer, and my wife's also a writer, freelance. And what you do is you learn how to deal with whatever happens to be coming next, because that's what I've always had to do. And so other people that have a job, and then there's a big layoff or a recession or something like that, and they all of a sudden they don't have their paycheck on Friday. They don't know what to do. What I always figured out is, well, you just do whatever's next. You figure it out, because that's what I've been doing my whole life. So in that sense, I think being dyslexic is an actually advantage, because it gives you a more open and kind of a survival view of how to do stuff, because you figure out how to deal with things that don't work out the way you thought they were going to do. And so I guess my advice to somebody who's been diagnosed as dyslexic is don't panic, man. You're just gonna get better at stuff. Doesn't mean you're stupid. I gave you that list of people, and there's all those kind of genius people that are that have learned how to cope and how to do stuff that nobody else figured out how to do, because maybe their advantage was that they were dyslexic and looked at things from a different way.
How has dyslexia changed or impacted your life?
It was hard, and for me, it manifests itself in numbers. Like I make, when you're learning long division, I don't know if you still teach that in school or not, but then you're doing long division where you have to write down numbers, and then you do the product below, and you draw a line, and you subtract, and then you do another one, and well, I couldn't. I transpose numbers all the time. I'd turn backwards, and which made it almost impossible for me to learn how to do that. And a lot of times, another thing that dyslexia, I think, provides some people, at least it did for me, was that you get a more global view of things. You get a big view of stuff, but the details, you get all messed up on the details. So what I would do is a lot of times I'd look at those simple problems anyhow. I could see the answer. I knew what it was because I could figure it out in my head. And I'd write the answer down, and I'd just make up a bunch of numbers and put them down below. And I got away with that for quite a while, until all of a sudden the teacher goes, "What is this?" And there I get back in the slow turtle row again. There I was. So that's another thing, is that I think that dyslexics may have a better global view, a big view of the whole picture of things, and be able to figure stuff out in a way that some people that go step by step by step don't see that. They focus too tightly on it. So when I was a junior in high school, I took chemistry. Everybody loves junior high school chemistry, you know how that goes. But anyway, and we'd have these quizzes and stuff once a week, and I was chugging along with C's and D's and stuff like that. And then we took a standardized test at the end of your junior year and in chemistry, and it was those multiple choice tests where you blacken out the little line A, B, C, D for the answers. Well, I could look at the problem or whatever it was, and then I'd look at the answers and I'd say, "Well, that's impossible, and that's impossible," and we get it down to one or two, and kind of figure out just from the big view of what the idea was to mark it. The results came back, and Mr. Johnson, I remember his name very well, handed out our chemistry test, and I've been chugging along at C and D range, and I got in 96th percentile on the second highest grade in the whole class in that. And Mr. Johnson, who knew me as not a very good student, at the end of class dismissed our class and said, "Tom, would you stay here a minute, please?" And I said, "Okay." Well, I was pretty proud of my 96. And he says, "Did you cheat on that test, or how did you cheat on that test?" And accused me of cheating, which was really another, still bothers me.
Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest thing, is that that kids that are dyslexic tend to, when they show their brilliance, people don't believe it. And it kind of goes over the head. So that's why I was never diagnosed, as I said, until I did it myself in college when I figured it out. But I think that that could be a real damaging thing, because if it's undiagnosed and people think you're stupid, you're not stupid. You just learn different than other people, and sometimes maybe better in a different way. And so that I think is it's one good thing now that educators have a much better sense of what dyslexia is and how different it can be, and kids are diagnosed with it earlier, and so maybe that same slow turtle row thing doesn't happen anymore, where you get funneled into something where you don't belong. It's just that I think educators are better at figuring out what might be, there's something wrong here, but it doesn't mean this person's stupid, and just find a better way to teach and a better way to find what works for that individual.